Should voting rights be limited according to an individual's knowledge level? In his letter from Birmingham jail, Martin Luther King Jr. pointed out that it is unjust to impose laws on minority groups that did not have a say in their creation. His remarks highlight the lack of meaningful input from black citizens during the drafting of segregation laws. He introduced a widely applicable principle. In a fair society, individuals should have the right to voice their opinions on laws that impact them. Yet in many democratic nations, not everyone is granted the right to vote. For example, children are commonly barred from voting, and most people do not view this restriction as unfair. We generally consider it reasonable to exclude children from the voting process. Children simply lack the understanding needed for voting in politics. They are seen as ignorant. However, if excluding children from voting due to their ignorance is justified, why not also exclude ignorant adults? Many average citizens have low political awareness. More than half of American citizens do not even know which party controls Congress. Who their congressional representatives are is not clear. Many children may know more about politics than some adults. For example, U.S. students often memorize the Power Act. This is about the first 10 amendments of the U.S. Constitution, but only under 30% of American adults can name more than 2 of them. In the U.S., voters are expected to demonstrate a certain level of political knowledge. The idea of political knowledge was controversial. During Jim Crow, literacy tests were common in the South. For instance, a Mississippi test required voters to describe things. Civic responsibilities were included, covering a section of the state constitution. At first glance, this appears to be a reasonable effort to stop politically ignorant people from voting, but in reality, this approach is problematic. The actual goal of these tests was to deny voting rights to African Americans. Due to a long history of oppression and ongoing marginalization, black citizens often lack the educational background to succeed in these tests. White citizens often skipped the tests. Meanwhile, John Mill proposed a new way to ensure elections weren't influenced by ignorant voters without excluding groups. His idea focused on to keep politics pure and elections fair. Excluding certain groups is not the way. He suggests giving more votes to knowledgeable voters instead of shutting out the less informed. Miller says extra votes should be based on academic success, giving more ballots proportionally. Until the 1950s, UK university graduates had voting rights that non-graduates lacked. While Miller's suggestion does not outright deny rights to minorities as the Jim Crow voting tests did, it still leads to a situation where privileged voters exert disproportionate influence over the electorate. In the US and many developed countries, education links closely to socioeconomic status, making attempts to reduce unqualified voters' influence on elections problematic. Whether by excluding them or giving knowledgeable people more votes to dilute their influence, both could lead to marginalized and historically oppressed groups being underrepresented in elections. In simpler terms, the voting restrictions meant to protect society from unqualified voters actually only serve to protect the rights of elites from electoral influence, which is quite obvious. In 1965, the United States abolished knowledge-based voting restrictions, but was this a good thing? Did the removal of these knowledge requirements actually lead to positive outcomes? Gillens and Page argued that this change did not make U.S. political representation more equal or democratic. They believe economic elites still have a strong influence today. Economic and business interests strongly influence U.S. policy, while ordinary citizens' preferences matter little. If after removing knowledge requirements, politics is still led by a few elites, letting the ignorant vote could mean they pick representatives who ignore them. Plato said, "Ignorance is democracy's weakness." Does requiring knowledge help? Does requiring knowledge enhance democracy's strength and shield it from this vulnerability? Maybe preventing easily manipulated, ignorant voters from voting would lead to elections that better represent the people's will. Alternatively, one could argue that ignorance justifies excluding someone from voting.